Rafael Nadal just did something that shocked the tennis world, and it's more serious than you think. We know that Nadal normally doesn't do social media drama, doesn't engage in public debates, doesn't get into arguments with coaches or commentators about tennis opinions. He's above that noise. Always has been. Stays quiet, lets his legacy speak for itself, moves on with his life. Until now. Mouratoglou just said something so ridiculous, so disrespectful, so completely divorced from reality, that even Rafael Nadal couldn't stay silent. The legendary coach who worked with Serena Williams posted a video claiming that Jannik Sinner is better than Novak Djokovic at everything except mental strength. That the new generation plays better tennis than the big three ever did. That one match proves nothing except what Mouratoglou already believed. And Nadal's response? He straight up mocked him. Posted laughing emojis under Mouratoglou's video for the whole tennis world to see. Not a thoughtful comment. Not a measured disagreement. Just pure, unfiltered laughter at what he'd just heard. The emoji equivalent of saying, "Are you serious right now?" Mouratoglou posted an Instagram video arguing that Djokovic beating Sinner in the Australian Open semi-final doesn't prove the big three are better, claiming Sinner is faster, hits harder, takes the ball earlier, and serves better than Djokovic. Mouratoglou doubled down, saying, "Novak is not a better tennis player than Sinner, but he is the greatest competitor in history." When criticized for having a massive ego, Mouratoglou fired back personally at users. Boris Becker also weighed in, telling Mouratoglou, "I think you're alone with your opinion," to which the French coach responded defiantly that he bases his opinions on his own analysis, not popular consensus. Nadal later deleted his emoji comment, but the damage was done. The internet had already captured it, and the mockery went viral. This isn't just about a disagreement over who's better. This is about respect. This is about a coach who built his reputation on other people's success, now trying to tear down the greatest era in tennis history to make himself sound smart and controversial. This is about someone who should know better, saying things that are so obviously wrong that even Rafa Nadal, who never engages in this stuff, felt compelled to publicly laugh at him. Let's break down exactly what Mouratoglou said, and why it's so absurd that it drew Nadal out of his social media silence. Mouratoglou's argument started with Djokovic beating Sinner in the Australian Open semi-final. A lot of people saw that match as proof that even at 38 years old, Djokovic can still compete with and beat the best young players in the world. That maybe the gap between the big three in their prime and the new generation isn't as big as some people think. Mouratoglou took the complete opposite view. He said that anyone who thinks Djokovic's win proves the big three are better is taking a short-sighted view. That one match doesn't change what he's observed over the past few years. That Sinner had won the previous 5 matches against Djokovic, so this one loss doesn't mean anything. Okay, that's a reasonable starting point, even if you disagree with it. But then Mouratoglou went completely off the rails. Jannik moves faster, hits harder, takes the ball earlier, and serves better than Novak, Mouratoglou declared. Novak has the strongest mentality in tennis history, and that's what made the difference. Novak is not a better tennis player than Sinner, but he is the greatest competitor in history. Let that sink in for a moment. According to Mouratoglou, the guy with 24 Grand Slams, the guy who's spent more weeks at number 1 than anyone in history, the guy who's won all 4 majors multiple times, the guy who is winning records against basically everyone he's ever played. That guy is not a better tennis player than Jannik Sinner. He's just better mentally. His actual tennis is worse. He just happens to be really, really good at competing. Do you see how insane that sounds? How does Mouratoglou think Djokovic won 24 Grand Slams if his actual tennis isn't as good as the current generation? Through sheer willpower? By psyching opponents out? By getting lucky 24 times? And that's why Nadal laughed. Because the take is so ridiculous that it doesn't even deserve a serious response. It deserves mockery. It deserves emojis that say, "I can't believe you actually said this out loud." The specific emojis Nadal used were perfect too. The blushing face with hand over mouth. The peeking eye emoji. And then 3 straight laughing faces. That's the emoji equivalent of, "I'm embarrassed for you. I can't even look directly at this. And I'm laughing so hard I need 3 laugh emojis to express it." Nadal rarely comments on tennis discourse. He doesn't get into debates about legacies or eras or who's better than who. He said multiple times that he doesn't like comparing generations and thinks everyone should just enjoy what's happening now without constantly measuring it against the past. But this was too much even for Rafa. This wasn't just comparing generations. This was actively disrespecting what the big three accomplished. This was saying that their tennis was worse, and they only succeeded because of mental strength, as if mental strength isn't a fundamental part of being great at tennis. And Nadal knows exactly how hard he and Federer and Djokovic had to work to reach the levels they reached. How much skill and talent and practice and refinement it took to dominate for 2 decades. The suggestion that current players hit harder or move faster or serve better, as if those things exist in a vacuum separate from actual tennis ability, is offensive to everything they accomplished. Because here's the thing Mouratoglou is missing. Djokovic at his peak was also hitting harder, moving faster, taking balls earlier, and serving better than anyone at that time. The game evolves. Training methods improve. Racket technology advances. Of course, current players have certain advantages over players from 20 years ago. But Djokovic wasn't playing 20 years ago when he won his 24th Grand Slam. He was playing recently, against these same players who supposedly have better tennis than him. And he beat most of them most of the time for most of his career. That's not just mental strength. That's being better at tennis. The argument that Sinner won more total points in the Australian Open semi-final, but lost the match, is particularly absurd. Mouratoglou presents this as evidence that Djokovic's tennis isn't as good. He only won because he won the big points, the ones that mattered. But winning the big points is tennis. That's literally what the game is about. You can't separate playing good tennis from winning the points that matter. That's like saying a boxer isn't actually good at boxing. He just happens to land punches at the right times. Djokovic won the big points because his positioning was better, his shot selection was smarter, his pressure management was superior, and yes, his mental strength allowed him to execute under pressure. All of those things are part of tennis. They're not separate from tennis ability. They're tennis ability. And Nadal knows this better than anyone because he's lived it. He's been in countless matches where the total points were close, or where his opponent had more winners or better stats in some categories. But Rafa won because he was better when it mattered. Was he not actually the better tennis player in those matches? Of course he was. That's ridiculous. The reaction from other tennis legends was swift and unanimous. Andy Murray, who competed against the big three his entire career and knows exactly how good they were, also dropped laughing emojis on the Mouratoglou video. That's 2 members of the big four basically saying, this is nonsense. Boris Becker, who's seen every era of tennis and coached Djokovic himself, chimed in with a direct response. Patrick, I think you're alone with your opinion. The typo aside should be your. Becker's point stands. Mouratoglou is isolated in this view. The people who actually played at that level, who competed in that era, who know what it took to succeed back then, they're not agreeing with him. They're laughing at him. And Mouratoglou's response to Becker was revealing. I never made an opinion based on what people think, but out of my own opinion. That's just a fancy way of saying, I don't care if everyone thinks I'm wrong, I'm going to keep saying this anyway. Which is fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. But when your opinion contradicts the views of multiple all-time greats who actually lived through what you're talking about, maybe you should reconsider whether you're onto something or just being contrarian for attention. Because that's what this feels like. Mouratoglou has built a brand around having hot takes and controversial opinions. He's the coach who says things that get reactions, who goes against conventional wisdom, who positions himself as the one person who really understands modern tennis, while everyone else is stuck in the past. And sometimes that approach leads to genuine insights. Mouratoglou has legitimately good analysis sometimes. He understands coaching and development, and what makes players successful. But sometimes it just leads to saying dumb things to get attention. And claiming that Sinner is better than Djokovic at tennis, but worse at competing, is one of those dumb things. The part about Alcaraz and Sinner having no weaknesses, compared to the big three, is equally problematic. Mouratoglou has said before that the new generation is more complete, that they don't have the weaknesses that previous champions had. Really? Federer's backhand was a weakness? Nadal's serve was a weakness? Djokovic's forehand was a weakness? These are some of the most complete players in tennis history. They wouldn't have 20-plus Grand Slams, each if they had exploitable weaknesses that prevented them from winning. Sure, they each had shots that were relatively weaker than their other shots. Federer's backhand wasn't as good as his forehand. Nadal's serve wasn't his biggest weapon. But calling these things weaknesses, in any meaningful sense, is absurd when all 3 players won majors on every surface against every type of opponent. And suggesting that Alcaraz and Sinner don't have weaknesses is even more absurd. They're both incredible players, But they've also lost matches to players outside the top 10. They've had tournaments where they looked beatable. They have aspects of their games that can be exploited if you have the right strategy and execution. The big three at their peaks were nearly unbeatable. There were years where Djokovic or Nadal or Federer would win 3 out of 4 majors, where they'd have 80+ match win percentages, where beating them required perfect execution and usually some luck. Alcaraz and Sinner are great, but they're not at that level of dominance yet. They might get there. They have the talent, but they haven't proven it over a decade plus like the big three did. Mouratoglou's take also completely ignores the context of competition. The big three were competing against each other. Every tournament, one of them had to get through at least one, and often two, of the other members of the big three to win. That's why their total Grand Slam counts aren't even higher. They were beating each other. Alcaraz and Sinner are competing against each other, and some pretty good, but not all-time great players. The depth of the tour is good, but there's nobody else at their level right now. When Djokovic and Nadal and Federer were in their primes, there were always at least 2 other all-time greats you had to beat to win a major. That's a crucial difference that Mouratoglou conveniently ignores in his analysis. The other fascinating aspect of this whole situation is that Nadal later deleted his emoji comment. It was up long enough for everyone to see it and screenshot it, but then it disappeared from Mouratoglou's post. Why did Nadal delete it? Maybe he felt like it was too petty to leave up. Maybe someone advised him that engaging in social media mockery wasn't a good look for his legacy. Maybe he just didn't want to be part of the ongoing drama. But the deletion actually makes it more interesting, because it shows Nadal had a genuine impulse to laugh at what Mouratoglou said, acted on that impulse, and then thought better of it. That's somehow more damning than if he'd just left it up. It suggests this take was so bad it broke through Nadal's usual restraint before his better judgment reasserted itself. And the tennis world noticed. Screenshots of Nadal's emojis went viral. Everyone was talking about Rafa dunking on Mouratoglou. The deletion didn't make it go away. It just added another layer to the story. Mouratoglou's defense of his position has been interesting too. When fans criticized him for having a massive ego, he fired back. Much bigger than you intellect for sure. That's not a great look. Responding to criticism by insulting people's intelligence while making a grammatical error should be your intellect. Just makes you look defensive and petty. And it reveals what's really going on here. Mouratoglou isn't making this argument because he genuinely believes it after careful analysis. He's making it because he wants to be the controversial voice, the one who says things others won't say, the coach who's not afraid to challenge conventional wisdom. But there's a difference between challenging conventional wisdom with actual insight and just being wrong in a loud way. And this is the latter. The broader context of this debate matters too. Because Mouratoglou has been saying for a while that Alcaraz and Sinner represent an evolution in tennis that surpasses what came before. That they're more complete, more skilled, more impressive than any previous generation. That's a take that's going to naturally upset legends who competed in previous eras. Because it's basically saying, everything you did was less impressive than what's happening now. That's disrespectful even if you think it's true. And the problem is it's not true. Or at least, it's not provably true yet. Alcaraz and Sinner might end up with better careers than the big three. They might win more Grand Slams, dominate for longer, achieve things we can't even imagine yet. But they haven't done it yet. They're at the beginning of their careers, not the end. Comparing their current level to the big three's entire careers is premature at best and actively misleading at worst. Nadal understands this, which is why he said repeatedly that we should enjoy the Alcaraz-Sinner rivalry without constantly comparing it to what came before. Let them build their own legacies. Appreciate what they're doing without tearing down what others accomplished. But Mouratoglou can't help himself. He has to make the comparison, has to declare that the new generation is better, has to position himself as the one person who really understands that tennis has evolved past what the big three were doing. And that's why Nadal laughed. Because it's transparent. Because it's disrespectful. Because it's wrong. And because sometimes the only appropriate response to something that absurd is mockery. The tennis world is largely siding with Nadal on this one. Comments on social media overwhelmingly support the big three and criticize Mouratoglou's take. People who watched Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer dominate for 2 decades aren't buying the argument that their tennis was somehow worse than what we're seeing now. Were they as fast as current players? Maybe not, given improvements in training and nutrition. Do they hit as hard as the young generation? On individual shots, perhaps not. But tennis isn't about individual physical metrics. It's about the complete package: shot selection, positioning, strategy, adaptability, mental strength, and yes, execution under pressure. And in all of those areas, the big three were, and Djokovic still is, extraordinary. To suggest that they were just mentally strong, but not actually better tennis players, is to fundamentally misunderstand what made them great. Mouratoglou should know this. As a coach who's worked with elite players, he should understand that mental strength isn't separate from tennis ability. It's a core component of it. The ability to execute your best tennis under maximum pressure is what separates legends from very good players. But he's chosen to die on this hill. To keep arguing that Sinner and Alcaraz are playing better tennis, even as Djokovic beats them in Grand Slam semi-finals. To keep insisting that the Big Three's success was primarily mental rather than technical. And the legends keep laughing at him. Nadal with his emojis, Murray with his laughter, Becker with his direct contradiction. The people who actually know what it takes to be great at this level are unanimous in their disagreement. That should tell Mouratoglou something. But based on his responses, it probably won't. He'll keep saying controversial things, keep positioning himself as the visionary who sees what others don't, keep building his brand on hot takes that generate reactions. And maybe that's fine. Maybe tennis needs voices like that, people who challenge consensus and make bold claims. But when those bold claims are contradicted by multiple all-time greats and basic logic, don't be surprised when Rafael Nadal decides to publicly laugh at you. Was Mouratoglou right that Sinner plays better tennis than Djokovic? Or is this the worst take in tennis history? Should Nadal have left his emoji comment up, or was he right to delete it? And does modern tennis really surpass the Big Three era? Drop your take in the comments, and let's debate whether Mouratoglou is a visionary or just saying dumb things for attention. Subscribe because this debate isn't over, and we'll be covering every development as legends continue to defend their era. Hit that like button if you think Nadal's emoji response was perfect. Sometimes mockery is the only appropriate reaction to a terrible take. The timing of Mouratoglou's comments also matters. He made these claims right after Djokovic had just proven he could still beat the best young player in the world in a 5-set thriller. Not in a quick match where Sinner played poorly. In a genuine battle where both players brought their A-games and Djokovic found a way to win. That's the exact opposite of evidence for Mouratoglou's argument. If Djokovic's tennis was worse than Sinner's, and he only won because of mental strength, how do you explain him winning from a set down? How do you explain him executing incredible shots under pressure? How do you explain him tactically adapting throughout the match? Mental strength doesn't hit winners down the line. It doesn't execute perfect drop shots. It doesn't create angles that pull your opponent out of position. Actual tennis skill does those things. And Djokovic displayed all of that skill against Sinner, not just toughness. But Mouratoglou can't acknowledge this because it would undermine his entire narrative. So he falls back on the one more total points argument, as if that's the measure of who played better tennis. By that logic, every 5-set match where the loser won more total points means the loser was actually the better tennis player. Which is obviously absurd. The fact that multiple Big Three members and other tennis legends are united in thinking Mouratoglou is wrong should be the end of the debate. When Nadal, Murray, and Becker all disagree with you about tennis, you're probably not onto some hidden truth they're missing. You're probably just wrong. But Mouratoglou has dug in. He's committed to this take now. Which means we'll probably hear more of it as Alcaraz and Sinner continue their careers. Every time they win something, Mouratoglou will use it as evidence that modern tennis has surpassed the Big Three era. Every time Djokovic beats them, he'll say it's just mental strength overcoming superior tennis. And every time, people who actually played at that level will roll their eyes or laugh or publicly disagree. Because they know better. They lived it. They competed in that era and know exactly how good you had to be to succeed. The legacy of the Big Three is secure regardless of what Mouratoglou says. Nadal doesn't need to defend it beyond emoji mockery. Djokovic doesn't need to respond at all. Federer is retired and probably hasn't even seen the comments. Their achievements speak louder than any coach's hot takes. But it's still satisfying to see Nadal break his usual silence to laugh at something this ridiculous. It's a reminder that even legends have their limits. That even someone as dignified and restrained as Rafa Nadal will occasionally see something so absurd that he can't help but react. And in this case, laughter was the perfect response. Not anger, not a detailed rebuttal. Just pure, simple mockery that said everything that needed to be said about Mouratoglou's take. Was Mouratoglou right that Sinner plays better tennis than Djokovic? Or is this the worst take in tennis history? Should Nadal have left his emoji comment up, or was he right to delete it? And does modern tennis really surpass the Big Three era? Drop your take in the comments, and let's debate whether Mouratoglou is a visionary or just saying dumb things for attention. Subscribe because this debate isn't over, and we'll be covering every development as legends continue to defend their era. Hit that like button if you think Nadal's emoji response was perfect. Sometimes mockery is the only appropriate reaction to a terrible take.